I was raised in the north woods of Wisconsin. The first part of my life, I had more interaction with deer and bear and porcupines than I did with people. I was sort of a feral child. I wasn't the youngest in my family. Well, when I was born, I guess I was the youngest. I guess all of us at one time were the youngest in our family. But what I mean is that by the time it was all over, I was the middle child of 9 children. We were pretty much free-range children with 100 acres of forest surrounding us. And when I was about 6 years old, I had a run-in with the law, and the law was compulsory education. I was institutionalized for the rest of my life, going from one institution to another, including the institution of marriage, which I was a repeat offender. In about the 3rd year of captivity, I was in 3rd grade. I was the smallest kid in my school. I was 9 years old. And the school had a talent show. Usually the upper class people participated in the talent show. So the students and the families and the community members were sort of surprised when this little 3rd grader walked out on stage. There are certain times in your life when you do something or something happens to you that changes your life forever. That talent show was one of those times. I walked out onto the stage, and in 60 seconds, my life was changed forever. Here's what I did. Now, it's been 50 years since I've done this, and I see my hand is a little shaky. And so I was actually better at this back then. When I originally proposed that I would be doing this talk today, they pointed out to me that I was proposing to do the whole talk with my back to the audience. And they said that like it was a bad thing. In the interest of time, I'm just going to complete this to show you what I was doing back then. I could do any cartoon character in less than 60 seconds. You know how parents and everybody ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? They never asked me again. They just assumed that I was going to be an artist. And it wasn't until I got into college, actually, where I had my first art class, that I found I was a little bit different than the other folks in those art classes, and that I wasn't really an artist, I was more of a designer. And I was a particular type of designer, a graphic designer who did 2-dimensional work. Illustration is what I did, then later graphic design, and of course as I expanded, it went into other 2-dimensional work, photography, video, film, things like that. And I found also that there were a lot of people who were doing other kinds of design. The people who designed the 3-dimensional objects, the chairs, the furniture, the appliances, and all of those. And there was another young man who grew up in Wisconsin. His name was Lloyd Wright. And he did a different kind of design, which is called 4-dimensional design, spatial design. The kind of architecture and landscape architecture and urban planning and set design and exhibit design, things like that. And then there's a new form of design that just was created during our lifetime. I mean, it had existed, but we didn't have a vocabulary for it. And we call it 5D experience design or interactive design. Things where you work with them. Like the difference between an art museum and a children's museum. You know, one don't touch and one please touch. So if I were to illustrate that with a little globe here, this is a representation of a four-dimensional huge space. A two-dimensional map is wrapped around a three-dimensional form to represent this four-dimensional space. If I did that, all of a sudden it's become an experience designed for that section of the table. And over there, so now we're engaged. We're interacting, a simplistic way, but just to illustrate the difference between these areas. Now these are the nouns of design. These are the things and the objects. There's also design as a verb. It's a process, things that you do. And the first step in that is to discover what needs to be designed, what problems exist, what intention or goal you have. And that's sometimes hard to do, and every once in a while we get a spark of an idea. Then we have to visualize that. There's a famous design firm called IDEO in Palo Alto. They're our mentors for the school that we're starting. And they call this part, because they work in the area of human-centered design, they call this part empathy. And this part they call ideation. I call it visualization because I want people to know that we have to get these ideas out of our minds, out where people can explore them. And then you have to prototype it. You have to make something with it. And then you have to learn how to present those ideas. You have to pitch those ideas to either to an investor or something. This is all, I believe, what many of the people in this room do as a regular part of their lives. So now let's think about how we could apply that to education. What would happen if these things, and you'll see that they sort of track right across, what if these things were the way that we taught in the schools? The Khan Academy has told us that we can videotape things and use videotapes so that a lot of that kind of stuff is done outside of school. But what is done inside of school is what we're talking about. When the students get to school, they start to make things. They develop the ability to ask questions. We lose that ability somehow in schools. Research shows that the questioning of students drops off drastically as soon as they enter school. We have to teach them to get that back, to get curiosity back. We have to get them to imagine all the possibilities that are out there in the world, things that they can do, and have the courage to realize, yes, we can change the world. And we have to make things. For so long, we have let the making part be outside of the school because kids worked on farms, you fixed your own cars and things like that. But today, many students do not have the experience that we used to have as growing up of making stuff, of physical work. And then that last part is sharing, pitching an idea, passing it on to others. And that's what folks in this room and presenting today are doing, stepping through all of these characteristics, creating a future into which we would all like to live, and then very importantly, sharing that with the world, spreading ideas to the world. Thanks very much.